The early years of an individual's life are critical for their emotional, social, and physical well being. This has an overall impact on their personalities as adults. A very good afternoon to all the participants gathered here today. I, Goretti Falcao, coordinator at GVM's Dr. Dada Vaidya College of Education, welcome you for this webinar, which is actually webinar series for you parents. This webinar series has been brought to you by GVM's Dr. Dada Vaidya College of Education, Department of Extension Service. Research says that the early years play a significant role in the brain development too. A person's early experiences, both with their parents as well as with the outside world, profoundly affect the future physical, cognitive, emotional, and social development. Keeping this in mind, we have come with this series of webinar for parents whose children are studying in the primary school. Today's topic: understanding developmental tasks of children of early childhood. Before we go into the topic, we have with us Dr. Jojen Matthew, officiating principal of GVM's Dr. Dada Vaidya College of Education, to give us the formal welcome.
Good evening, one and all. Resource person for today's seminar, Dr. Jessica Pinto, Mrs. Goretti, Coordinator of Extension Services, teaching staff, faculty members, research scholars, and all the participants. I am very happy to address you all on this first day of this series of webinars, and this is a very unique series of seminar that we are organizing. Usually we organize seminars for teachers and students, and this time we are organizing this seminar for the parents of the primary school children. I think it was Pestalozzi who said that if you want to do justice to your children, you need to learn psychology. And primary education is the foundational stage, and it is very, very important that we have to build the proper foundation. Then only the superstructure will remain strong. Lot of money is spent on higher education and secondary education, especially in the field of research. But primary education is totally neglected. Also, the research scholars and those who do research, they find it difficult to collect data from secondary and higher levels than collecting data from primary levels. So even when our research scholars, when they do research, they prefer to do it for the high secondary or higher level of students. So today, I am very happy that we are organizing this seminar, and I would like to congratulate especially the coordinator for taking the initiative for conceiving this particular program, and today we are able to start off with the first series of this seminar. And once again, I would like to welcome Dr. Jessica Pinto, our today's resource person. Thank you very much, ma'am, for agreeing to be the resource person for this seminar, and I am sure that all the resource persons are very well learned, and also they are in the field. They have a lot of practical experience to share with the parents. And I would like to once again welcome the participants, and I am sure that you are all going to benefit from this seminar a lot. And if you have some questions and if you have some problems, you can share it with these resource persons so that you can help your children. I wish all the best for the seminar and for the participants. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir, for all your guidance and support all through you give us to conduct such webinars. Thank you once again. And now it's my proud privilege to introduce the resource person for today, Dr. Jessica Pinto. She finished her MBBS from Goa Medical College, GMC, in 2015 and completed her diploma in child health from GMC. She has worked as an assistant lecturer in the GMC between 2017 and 2020. She is the Indian Academy of Pediatrics Fellow in Development Behavioral Pediatrics at Setu Center. Dr. Pinto is currently working towards completing the MRCPCH examination. As we wish you good in this examination, I must say we are thankful to you for taking your time out to be with us and give us this webinar. So over to Dr. Jessica Pinto.
Yeah, so a very good afternoon to everyone present here today. I take this opportunity to thank Dr. Matthew, Teacher Goretti, the faculty of GVM that has provided us with this platform and made this opportunity possible. And most importantly, I'd like to thank all the parents present here today who have taken time out from your busy schedules to join us in this discussion on child development. So if you will just give me a minute, I will begin to share my screen and then we can proceed from there. Shanessa, are you able to view the slides?
Yes. Yes, Jessica, you need to put it in slideshow.
All right, thank you. Yeah, it's fine. Okay. Okay. So the topic for today that we're going to be discussing is understanding developmental tasks in early childhood. So before we actually delve into the topic, I'd just like to speak a little bit about Setu and what we do here. Setu serves as a bridge between children, their families, schools, and the communities to foster their development through the process of assessments, therapies, educational initiatives, as well as training and capacity building opportunities like the one we are having today. Setu envisions a world where all children are accepted, loved, respected, and celebrated. Just excuse me for 1 minute. It's not sharing. Right. Okay. It's sharing. Okay, but we didn't. Okay. Yeah, it's fine. You want to check from that? Okay. So, I'm so sorry about that interruption, but moving on. So, Setu envisions a world where children are accepted, loved, respected, and celebrated, where all their rights are upheld and education is truly inclusive, such that each child has the opportunity to reach their full potential. The approach that we use to ensure the above include early intervention, starting with strengths, knowing that everyone is doing something right. And lastly, and most importantly, building bridges everywhere a child is, whether it's at home, in the school, or in the community. This webinar is an interactive one. I would request all of you to keep your mics on mute unless you are speaking and interacting. Video should ideally be placed off. Please feel free to type comments and questions in the chat box. And at the end of this webinar, we do look forward to your feedback as it's very important to us. So let's begin understanding developmental tasks in early childhood. So before I move any further, would any one of the parents like to give us an idea of what their understanding of development is? Anyone can feel free to unmute yourselves and speak up or write it in the chat box. So, Shanasa, would you be able to tell me if
Teacher Goretti will be reading out the questions.
right, okay. Okay, anyone would like to share? Teacher Garetti, would you like to give us an idea of what you as a teacher would understand from what is development?
Hello.
Yeah.
Uh, according to me, hello.
Yeah.
According to me, child development means like whatever changes the changes takes place in the whenever child speak, like language changes or physical changes or emotional changes, thought changes, whatever these changes takes place in a child. So that is a child development according to me.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you so much, Teacher Garetti. And I think Teacher Garetti has done an excellent job of summing up development in a few lines. So, when we talk about child development, we're talking about a process of change that is continuously occurring in both the child's mind as well as the child's body. And this process is something that goes on right from birth up until adolescence. Does it mean we stop developing once we turn 18 years? Of course not. But the major part of our development occurs in the first 18 years of life. So, just like I mentioned, it's very important to remember that this development we talk about is a continuous process. And actually, it begins well before the child is even born. The rate at which children develop may be different from child to child. However, the order or the sequence in which this development happens always remains the same. So, let's say, for example, if we are talking about the physical development of a child, we do know that a child will first start turning over, then start sitting, then start standing, and only then will the child start walking. Now, different children may do each of these skills at a different age, but all of them follow the same sequence of development. So, what are developmental tasks? Developmental tasks basically refer to a set of skills or achievements that children learn at different points in time on their path to maturity. So, at different points in the life of a child, it is necessary for them to learn a certain set of skills that then helps them progress to a more advanced level of learning. And through this, we are then able to achieve maturity and function as adults. If a child fails to achieve a particular skill at any point during his development, it's extremely difficult for the child to then progress to a higher level. Now, when we talk about developmental tasks, these occur in all areas of a child's life. So, whether it's physical, which is what we can see, so in terms of the child's growth in weight, in height, as well as their abilities to walk, then run and climb, and so on, or whether it is biological, referring to the multiple processes which happen within our body. So whether it refers, so it may refer to a child's ability to be toilet trained, or a child's ability to understand hunger and then express it appropriately. It also refers to children's intelligence. So the ability of children to understand the world around them, to process the information that they learn from the environment, and then use that information in different situations. It also deals with their social development. So, building up social interaction between peers, between children and adults. And lastly, and possibly the most important, the emotional development of a child. So, the ability of a child to understand emotions, to regulate those emotions, and then to express those emotions in an appropriate way. So, as parents of children who are in primary school, you may have noticed that soon after your child was born, and maybe even in the first 2 or 3 years, you've probably seen a quite significant increase in their height, in their weight, and also a development of a lot of physical skills, from being a baby who's just learning to turn over. By 3 or 4 years old, your child was probably able to jump, run, climb on things, ride a cycle, and so on and so forth. However, as children begin to enter school, we realize that their physical development takes a back seat, and it's more of their cognitive, social, and emotional development that starts to grow. Since we are so well aware of what happens physically to our children and how they develop physically, it's equally important as parents of school going children to understand how their brain grows as well. And this is what we call neurodevelopment, or understanding the development of the child's brain. The maximum brain growth is known to happen in the first 5 years of a child's life. So, about 75% of that growth has already finished by the time a child is 2 years old. And up until 90% of the growth happens by the time a child is 5 years of age. When we talk about growth in the brain, we talk about it increasing in its size, but at the same time, we also talk about an increasing number of brain connections that are formed. And all of these brain connections are formed based on our exposure to different experiences and different kinds of stimulation that a child may receive. And the most of this usually happens when the child is at school. So, looking at this picture, would any of the parents be able to tell me which ones of these functions do they feel that their child requires to use most when the child is at school? Would any parent like to unmute and share? Which one of all these functions do you think your child uses most when they are at school? Or you can put it in the chat box as well.
Hearing, decision making,
Excellent. Thanks so much. Anything else?
attention, planning.
Yes, definitely. Anyone else? Okay, so thank you so much, ma'am, for all of those very appropriate answers. So we do know that at every point or every moment in our life, we have to use all of these functions, whether it is knowing to move or using our hearing or using our vision or smell, as well as attention and planning and decision making and remembering things, so using our memory. However, it is important to note that while in the initial few years of our life, so from the time we are born till we are 2 or 3 years old, many of these functions like movement, all of the sensations, so touch, taste, hearing, vision, smell, all of these develop very rapidly in those times. However, as a child enters school, the functions like attention, planning, decision making, memory processing, and use of speech becomes even more relevant. Very often, because children don't have enough practice using these functions of their brain, they do tend to struggle in some areas of school. And it's our job to help them and to support them in using these functions. So, moving forward, as parents of school going children, you all will all agree with me when I say that your primary aim is to ensure that your child excels at what is known as literacy skills. So that's reading, writing, mathematics, and so on. However, it's very important for us to understand that these skills can only be mastered once the foundation for them has been appropriately set. And this is what is shown in this pyramid here today. So, in order for school going children to excel at developmental tasks of reading and writing, they must be able to play and interact appropriately, have appropriate attention and listening spans, understand and use words and sentences, and only then will they be able to master the art of reading, writing, and arithmetic. So let's deal with one at a time. So, play and interaction. And what do we mean by that? It has been scientifically proven that providing children with an opportunity to play on their own, either with peers or parents, in a way that is decided by the child. So, what's also known as free play or child directed play. This has proven to be beneficial for brain development. So, the pictures that you see here involve play using one's imagination or creativity. Scientific studies have proven that encouraging your children to play in this way helps to build up their creativity and imagination, which goes a long way in building up intelligence. It also helps children to learn problem solving strategies. So, when they encounter problems in their imaginary world, they are then able to translate those same solutions into their real world problems. It also helps them to make decision making skills. Other forms of play in older children, like playing organized sporting games or taking part in games involving teamwork, also helps in social and emotional growth of children. So it helps them to build their communication skills. It provides them opportunities to negotiate through difficult situations with their teammates. It also teaches them about responsibility. And more importantly, it gives them opportunities to follow rules without being told repeatedly by an adult or a teacher. All of these go a long way in building up what is called self-discipline. So the ability to then regulate our behavior, regulate our emotions, and regulate our wants in appropriate manners then aids in academic excellence. Hence, at the age of primary school, it is very important to encourage children to indulge in both creative play, like we saw above. So, pretend playing to be a soldier or role playing to be a doctor or a teacher, while at the same time involving oneself in organized activities, whether it's sports like football, cricket, etc., without the involvement of an adult, or whether it's team games like, say, cops and robbers or treasure hunt, etc. All of these games are able to teach children teamwork, responsibility, and appropriate communication. Moving forward, the next level of skill that a child needs to master before they attain academic success is attention and listening. So, when we talk about attention and listening, we refer to what is known as executive functions. What are executive functions? They are basically a set of processes that take place within our brain that help us to monitor and regulate our behaviors in specific ways in order that we achieve a particular goal. The four executive functions that I've put up here include flexible thinking, impulse control, working memory, and the skill of organization. Now, to make this a little more concrete, I'd like to do a small exercise with the group present here today. So, I have before me a set of 4 situations that I would present one by one, and I would like the parents to put forward which one of these executive functions do you feel that the child in this situation lacks. So you can just put down the question number, and at the side you can put in what you think, which one of the 4 executive functions I'm talking about. Okay, you can either feel free to do this in the chat box, or you can do this for yourself personally, and then we will discuss these in further detail. Okay, so let's begin. So the first situation is about Ravi. So Ravi was playing a game on his parents' mobile when he suddenly lost the game. Ravi got really angry and he threw the mobile down in a fit of anger, and therefore breaking the mobile. So which one of these executive functions do you think that Ravi lacked, as a result of which he behaved this way? Okay. Moving forward, okay, the next situation. So Rajesh wanted help with his school assignment. He needed his mum to help him with it, and so he repeatedly went and asked her. However, his mum was busy making dinner. So Rajesh went on asking her over and over again, despite mum saying that she couldn't. And finally, mum got really irritated and said, Rajesh, just go ask your dad for help. So, which one of these executive functions do you think that Rajesh struggled with, because of which he got into trouble today?
Jessica,
Yeah.
Are we doing it question wise, or we'll wait till all the four questions get over and then they get their answers?
No, we can do it question wise because it's just one question for each situation. So they can just put it in the chat box below.
Yeah, so we have one answer for the first
Yeah.
situation what you mentioned,
Yeah,
which
I
is
saw that.
flexible thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can see the chat. So I'll address them all at the end when I'm explaining all of them together.
All right. All right. Okay.
Okay. Okay. So if anyone has an answer for the second question about Rajesh and his mom, you can feel free to put it in the chat box. Okay. Okay. Moving forward, so let's talk about Shweta. Now, Shweta is studying in grade 3, but her parents often find her coming home with incomplete notebooks because she's unable to finish copying from the board. She also makes very careless mistakes in copying maths questions from her textbook onto her notebook. And she can't seem to remember poetries as well as her other friends can. So, could anyone figure out which one of these executive functions does Shweta struggle with? Okay. Anyone else besides Sarika? Sarika, thanks so much for your answers. Anyone else? Okay. And the last situation is that of Sahil. So Sahil is often late for school as he just cannot find his books or his pencils on time. He spends a lot of time searching for his stuff and usually ends up missing the school bus because of this. So which one of these four do you feel that Sahil struggles with? Okay, so thank you so much, Sarika, Priya, Lorraine, and Jay for those answers. And all of you guys are pretty spot on with your answers. So let's use these examples to understand a little more about what each of these executive functions mean and how it applies to what our kids do every day in school. So let's start with flexible thinking. What does flexible thinking mean? It refers to our ability to come up with various solutions for a single problem. So, if we talk in the context of Rajesh, okay, who kept annoying mum to get his to help him, sorry, with his project, okay, but mum was busy. So if Rajesh had good flexible thinking and if he was able to think of another solution to the problem he faced, he would realize that if mum is busy, maybe I can go ask dad, or maybe I can go ask bhaiya, or maybe I can leave this for now and do something else, or maybe I can just skip this difficult part of the assignment and move forward and then come back to it when mum is free. Because Rajesh was unable to use his abilities to think to come up with various solutions, he did the only thing he knew to, which was to repeatedly ask mum over and over again. Very often we may come across children like this in schools, and even you may find your kids doing this at home sometimes, and we often think, oh, these kids are very annoying and they're just not listening, and why isn't he listening to what I'm trying to say, that I'm busy? But the point is simply this, that it's really hard for this child to think of another solution. And therefore, that's when, as parents and adults, we can step in to help them think of alternative options. Okay. Now, the next the next executive function is impulse control. So, just like the picture shows, our ability to stop, to think, and then to act. Now, Ravi, who was playing on his mobile, lost a game. If Ravi had good impulse control, he would realize that it was just a game and he didn't need to get so angry, and that throwing the phone down would result in breaking it and getting him into even bigger trouble. However, because children in primary school or young children do struggle with being able to control their impulses, they often tend to give in to their feelings and emotions, which is why we often find children hitting each other or throwing things or getting into fights, because they have difficulty regulating their emotions and controlling the way they act. And at the same time, you may have your child may often say to you, Mama, only 5 minutes of TV. And you come back after 1 hour and you find, oh, you're still here at the TV. And the same with video games or mobile games. It's difficult for a child to be able to stop themselves from doing something they like and move on to doing something more important, because it's hard for them to control their impulses. Let's then talk about Shweta and her inability to complete her books, to remember facts, to remember poetries. And like you rightly said, that's because Shweta seems to have a lack or a deficit in her working memory. So, what does working memory mean? So, in context, just like when we receive OTPs or one time passwords on our phone, what we do is try and remember that 6 or 7 digit number and then feed it into the other website. Our ability to remember short bursts of information for short period of times is what constitutes our working memory. This is extremely important in children in primary school, because when it comes to things like copying from a board or copying from a textbook, one has to be able to remember or memorize what has been written on the board in a single sentence and then write it on the book. Children who have difficulties with working memories, you will find, often have to look up at the words on the board every few seconds as they go along, and therefore they lag behind that of their peers. And it's the same with remembering facts or remembering short poetries or memorizing things, or even when they read a book or read a page for that matter, remembering what was at the beginning of the page once you have reached the end. All of these functions are controlled by our working memory. And lastly, we'll talk about Sahil. So poor Sahil's always running helter skelter, trying to find his stuff, not sure where he's kept his books and pencils, and eventually being late and getting into trouble. So, like you all rightly said, it deals with Sahil's inability to organize, to plan, and prioritize. So, when we talk about a child's ability to organize, we talk about their ability to organize in terms of space, meaning knowing to keep your books in a particular place, keep your pens within your pencil box, making sure all your colors are together when you come home from school, as well as their ability to organize within time, meaning knowing that you have to finish your homework and only then go to play, knowing that I have 3 different sets of homework that I need to do and how much time which will each of these take. As you can imagine, these are extremely hard tasks for any individual to do. However, in young children, these tasks take on an entire different level of complexity. All of these 4 tasks that I mentioned are controlled by one part of our brain, which is known as the frontal lobe, or as we saw in the picture before, the part which was marked in blue. In a child, this part of the brain, also known as the frontal lobe, is not fully developed. And it only develops when a child reaches around 18 years of age to the mid 20s. So therefore, as adults, several tasks that we may take for granted and wonder why our children are not able to perform these tasks simply stem from the fact that their brains are not yet conditioned to do this. So, what can we do to help children build these executive functions? So, ensuring that a child receives at least 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night, gets a good amount of exercise, at least half an hour of some kind of running, jumping, fun filled exercise, and ensuring that they have a high protein diet, like a diet which has fish, chicken, dals, lentils, milk, etc. What are other things that we can do? One, establishing a timetable for your child, whether it is for his or her daily routines or whether it is for academics. So providing children with concrete measures of how long they need to do things, in what order they need to do things, and when they need to do these things gives them a better sense of organization that they would have been able to establish themselves. Use of a timer again provides them with an objective period of time that they have to do a particular task. And then providing them frequent breaks for short periods of time. So these breaks, what we refer to as movement breaks, where your child is given an opportunity to maybe run, jump, dance, anything involving movement, because this again, frequent breaks again helps to build up a child's executive functions. Use of simple instructions. Because children have difficulty with their working memory, it's hard for them to actually remember 2, 3 different instructions that their parents may have given them. So, ensuring that you give your child instruction one at a time, ensuring that the child is looking at you while you are giving the instruction, and then moving on to the second and the third instruction. Similarly, breaking up big, difficult tasks into smaller pieces. So, for example, if your child has an English essay that's due in a week, maybe getting him to do one paragraph every day would work much better than leaving it up to him. Because since children struggle with prioritization and planning, you will often find your child doing it at the very last moment. Helping children to discover alternate solutions to problems they face. So, just like Rajesh, who couldn't think beyond asking his mom for help, a better response from mom rather than shouting at Rajesh would be to ask Rajesh, what do you think you can do if mom can't help you? Or what do you think would be another way of going about this? Rather than providing your child with the solution, it's always better to get them to think about it and then provide the solutions to you, because this helps to build flexible thinking. Helping them to be organized by using colorful files, sticky notes, checklists, labeling spaces where they should be keeping things also goes a long way in making sure the whole house is not turned upside down looking for stuff. And lastly, some fun ways in which we can build executive functions. So, playing card games like matching pairs, in which children have to remember where a card was before, and that helps to build working memory. Playing a game like Snap, where they have to pay great attention and detail to the cards being placed and immediately place their hand when a matching pair comes out. So, that helps to build again attention and impulse control. Board games like chess and Sudoku help children to build their working memory. It also teaches them to focus and to learn to persevere until they reach a goal. And in younger children, playing action games like Simon Says, and they have to change a movement, of playing freeze or statue, where they have to position themselves in a particular way. These are again things that help to build children's impulse control. Okay. So moving forward, now that we've done with play and interaction and how to build your child's ability to pay attention and listen, okay, we now are going to deal with the areas of understanding and using of words and sentences. So let's talk about a little bit about what children in what kind of language skills that children in primary schools must have. So at this level, we do expect that children develop clear speech which is understandable to all, and it should be spoken in an appropriate pace, so at an appropriate speed. Children should learn to have what are known as conversational skills. So, the ability to listen to someone, to pay attention, to retain the information in their minds, then to process their own thoughts in an orderly manner, and then express it. As adults, we often take this skill for granted because it comes so naturally to us. But for children, it involves the use of their listening abilities, their abilities to pay attention, process information, and so many different executive functions that we've just spoken about. Children should also learn to question and be able to bring out logical reasonings and answer appropriately. Again, skills that require executive functioning. The ability to retell stories, and also the use of manners, because nowadays it's just so important to know that your child is polite. So how do we build language skills? So it's very important to understand that as a parent, whenever we want our child to do something, there is no better way of teaching them to do it than us doing it ourselves. So, if you want to teach your child listening skills, there's nothing better than actually listening when your child is speaking. Listening with all of your attention without being distracted by things like a phone ringing or someone else calling us. Modeling language, encouraging children to use the language that you would want them to use by you doing it yourself. So whether it's things like thank you, please, excuse me, or not interrupting conversations and waiting till someone's finished speaking, okay, all of these are traits that children learn from us as adults, and therefore it's easy to teach them if we practice it ourselves. Role playing various situations. So, for example, if you find that your child is always interrupting someone's conversation, you can role play a situation where your child learns to say, excuse me, or I have something to say when they want to speak. And doing this repeatedly teaches the child this behavior, because just like we discussed when we were talking about the brain, the connections within the brain are strengthened through repeated practice. Narrating and retelling stories. So, encouraging your child to tell you stories, as well as encouraging your child to retell stories that he has heard. This helps to build a child's working memory where they have to remember all the details of the story. It helps them to learn to sequence and organize their thoughts, wherein they have to tell the story from a beginning, a middle, and an end. And lastly, building up conversational skills. Encouraging your child to have a conversation with you every day. It may be related to that what the child did today, or what they played on the playground, or what happened in art class today. It could be anything. It's just about encouraging your child to use language and therefore conversation on a daily basis, so that it's much easier going forward. Okay. So now that we've achieved all of these foundational skills that are required, we finally come to literacy skills. And that is really the crux of today's lecture. So, how do we build our child's reading, writing, and math skills? And what do we expect our children to do at this age? So when we talk about reading, in a child who's in kindergarten, around 5 years of age, we expect them to know that certain letters are associated with certain sounds. As children grow through first and second grade, they are able to identify words by just looking at them, and this helps them build up the speed at which they read. And children who are then in fourth grade onwards should be able to read in order to learn information from reading. So, how do we build up reading skills? Before we learn to build up reading skills, it's important that we build a child's interest in reading. So, ensuring that a child knows that reading is a fun activity goes a long way in academic excellence. Children who look at reading with disdain and hatred and think of it as a chore are less likely to excel academically compared to their peers who have been exposed to reading continuously through their life. So if you have a young child, just giving the child a book in their hand, teaching them the back from the front, teaching them that words start from left to right, that sentences begin with capital letters, that's a great start for children to learn that reading is fun and important. Children in the like grade 1 and grade 2 students can be taught through word games. So whether it's using small magnetic alphabets or even puzzles with alphabets and getting them to use those to form words, while bigger children who are in third grade and above can learn from games like Scrabble. Okay, teaching children reading in all practical situations. So, getting them to read signboards, getting them to read directions, maybe even having them read over your shoulder as you read from the newspaper. So, anything to incorporate reading into their everyday life. Another very helpful tactic is to develop a reading routine. And this is something that should start as early as possible. But it's never too late to begin a reading routine. So, having a younger child sit in the mom's lap, like in the picture, with the parent pointing to each word as the parent reads, to older children sitting along with their parents and reading out loud with their parents filling in the difficult words that they struggle with. Children who struggle with reading can also be asked to just begin by describing the pictures that they see in the book. So, encouraging them to describe the picture, maybe guess what's going to happen at the end of the story, or even get them to retell the story so you know that they have begun to understand it. In older children, building vocabulary by teaching them to refer to a dictionary or look up the meaning of words and then use those new words in their everyday conversation. So, keeping maybe a special time in the day where everyone in the family plays this game where they are using a new word in a sentence. Younger children can be taught to play rhyming word games because that again helps them to associate words with sounds. What are the developmental tasks in writing that we expect children to achieve? So while children in still grade 1 should learn to hold a pencil correctly and know that letters are associated with sounds, older children go on to then write complex sentences and to express their ideas through writing. So what can we do to develop writing skills? So, in younger children, practicing skills that require hand-eye coordination and the use of fingers. So children in KG, so in the KG as well as grade 1 can be given fun activities like playing with play-doh or making things which can be squished between their fingers, or even very delicate craft work like sticking things together. All of these help to build hand-eye coordination and more precise use of our fingers. In children who struggle with writing or who don't like to write, okay, using fun things like patterns, mazes, join the dot activities, all of these help children to understand their ability to write within to or rather form patterns within a specific space, as well as leaving specific amount of space between two alphabets, and it also helps to develop hand-eye coordination. And in bigger children who have mastered all of these skills, using writing in practical life. So, whether it's helping mom make out a shopping list of things, so you can ask your child to maybe write the word tomato or chili. And if the child maybe doesn't know the entire spelling, he can even begin by writing out just the first alphabet of the word. Encouraging children to make thank you cards or any kind of cards in general, encouraging them to write small letters, whether it's letters to Santa or any member of the family. And in bigger children, encouraging them to keep something like a scrapbook where they put in pictures of their daily life, of some interesting event, and then they start writing small short sentences about what this event is. So even in children who have an aversion to writing or don't like to write, they can even start by just telling their parents what to write. And then the parent can gradually progress to getting the child to write the first word, and the parent writes the rest, and then gradually build on the number of words that the child writes. And lastly, when we talk about the developmental tasks that children need to learn in the areas of arithmetic, okay, so children who are preschoolers usually are able to identify quantities and bigger and smaller, while children in like first and second grade usually have a fair understanding of time as well as basic addition, subtraction. And then you have older children who are able to apply the concepts that they've learned in the younger classes to real world situations wherein they are presented with word problems and then coming up with alternative ways to solve problems. So, how do we build children's interest in math? Using the language of math. What does that mean? Incorporating math into your everyday work, whether it is telling a younger child, bring me 2 potatoes or bring me 4 onions, okay, thereby teaching the child that the number 4 is associated with a particular quantity, or even using or even teaching them addition and subtraction by saying, oh look, you have maybe 5 pencils and now I've put in 2 more, so how many does it make? So introducing maths into every part of their life, introducing math into play. So how do we do that? So in older kids, you can use board games like say Ludo or Snakes and Ladders, where they have to count backwards, forwards, so subtraction and addition through every step of the way. Okay, younger children can be just asked to do fun things like you can see in the picture below, where they're asked to actually count out the number of quantities. Older children are also encouraged to use mental math. So whether it's just having a family, mental math at the family gathering, or the parents and the children sitting together and everyone doing a mental math task just to make it more fun. And lastly, focusing on problem solving. When your child comes to you with a maths problem and wants the answer, it's much better to get your child to explain how he or she would solve it rather than just telling him the answer. For example, if your child comes to you and says, Mom, what's 5 minus 3? If you tell him it's 2, he understands that 5 minus 3 is 2, but he doesn't really know how that process of subtraction has come about. Rather, if you tell him, let's take 5 pencils and then remove 2 pencils and see how many are left, this will be a learning experience that he's going to take forward through every part of his life. So, with that, I'd like to now stop and ask parents what are other measures that they use in their own homes to build up on their child's reading, writing, and math skills. Feel free to unmute yourselves and let's share our points.
Hi,
Yeah. Hi,
yeah,
ma'am.
Pallavi here. You just gave the example of subtraction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even I tried that first. When my daughter used to ask me that what is 5 minus 3,
Mm-hmm.
so I used to tell her that just take 5 fingers and just minus 3 on it. So you'll get the answer.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great, really. So I'm sure that your child could then use that strategy for any kind of
Yes,
questions with subtraction, right? And the
yes,
same with
yes, yes.
addition. Excellent.
Now,
Anyone
now
else?
she will do by her own. She won't come and ask me anything for
That's
subtraction,
great.
addition.
Excellent. Anyone else would like to share? Yeah, or you can even put your suggestions in the chat box below. It is just helpful. So the skill that you've been practicing at home may be something that would go on to help many of the other parents who may struggle with similar problems. So, right. So Priya said we can use objects, and that's perfectly true. So whether it is within the house or even if you go on a shopping trip with your kids and say, let's look at the if you have a chocolate box, so using describing that object in terms of its shape, so saying, see, look, we have a rectangular chocolate box. Yes, Sarika, mental math games, rhyming words. Thanks, Tara. Definitely, these are all brilliant ways to build up kids math and language. Okay, so even a simple game like Chinese whisper is also really helpful to get kids to pay attention to what's being said to them, retain that information, and then pass it on appropriately to the next person. Though usually it doesn't happen, but it's still a fun way to build some of those skills. Okay. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. And I would also like to hand over the mic back to Teacher Garetti and Dr. Matthew uh, as we have come to the end of my presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Tara. Thanks.
In the meantime, participants feel free to ask whatever questions that you might have. Use this time for asking questions. Thank you.
When a child has blending words difficulty, how do you deal with that problem or that issue?
Okay, so could you give me an example?
Like for example, if in case it's a difficulty, like suppose BR, if in case it's pronunciation of br, fr or blur, some some s- some kind of this. Right now with the COVID situation, when the child was going from upper KG to first, they are facing this issue quite a lot. So I'm finding many kids coming up with this problem. So, how to tackle this issue, or if in case the parents are concerned with that, so
Yeah.
how to, yeah,
So thank you so much, Sati. That was a
yeah,
really that's a really pertinent question,
yeah,
especially since a lot of parents are kind of homeschooling at this point.
yeah, yeah,
Even though we do have. So again, what's important to understand is that much before children learn to blend words together, they must learn to first break up words.
yeah,
Okay, so if they are not, so one thing is if they are not able to break up the words into its sounds appropriately, then it may be hard for them to put it together. Also, if you find that your child is genuinely struggling at a level that you feel he or she should have achieved by now, then it's a good idea to kind of maybe get your child assessed for why that's happening. Okay.
Okay.
However, in general, certain like small ideas would be like, using so maybe just stressing on the word sounds in different formats. So if it's say br, so whether you use it in breeze, or whether you use it in br or brat, just
Yeah.
constantly reinforcing the same sounds but in different aspects, and then including it when you use it in speech also, maybe just stressing on that part, just the sounds, and that will probably help your child learn it when they hear it repeatedly.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Can I also add over here? So when you're teaching your child words like blending words like this, when you're when they are represented visually, if these parts of the word can be color coded, so that
Okay.
will help the child to remember them better. Like if it's branch, then brr, that sound will
Yeah.
be color coded in a different color, so that when
Okay.
the child is reading that word, then they will remember that part. Also,
Okay.
when you're showing them the word branch visually, also having a picture of a branch of a tree maybe, so that they can
Yeah.
associate both
With the yeah.
the word itself
Yeah.
and the picture of the word.
With the picture. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Uh, Dr. Jessica, I had a question for you.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Uh, I would like to know, or maybe you can suggest some ways by which we as parents can teach our children to be more independent. If you could suggest some ways how they can learn from small how to be a little independent, some activities. So you have told us some very nice activities. So for this also, if you can suggest, thank you.
Right. Sure. Sure. That's a great question. I think that's really a webinar on its own because there are so many areas in which we need to build children's independence, and I mean it's definitely a priority from a young age. Okay. So when we talk about independence in different areas, so let's start with maybe things like dressing. Okay, where we would want our child to be able to put together, pick up clothes from the cupboard and then put them all on and then settle things down, right? So we do what we call backward chaining. Okay, so what it basically means is allowing your child to start with the easiest task. Okay, so say we are talking about the child dressing. So as a mom and dad, you have put on the child's shirt, you have put on his pants, and the first step would be for the child to then pull up the zip. Once he has mastered that, then you move on to, okay, like say the pant, you would pull the pant up halfway and then the child does the rest and then pulls up the zip. So he's learned two tasks. So that way, gradually increasing the amount of work the child does up until the point where he's put on the pant completely independently. Okay, so that's say with regard to the child dressing, and similarly with other things like say brushing. So again, uh, to begin with, maybe you can just get the child to only rinse his mouth at the end of the brushing cycle. As he masters that, then you'd move on to be done, and then so on. So gradually increasing the amount of thing that the child is doing on his own. It's very important that at every step of the way the child is praised, saying, you're doing such a great job, even if it's the tiniest thing that he's done. When a child understands that me doing this on my own pleases my mom, mom or dad, he's surely going to want to do more and more things. Again, it's always a good idea to give children choices. So that again helps to build up independence. So saying, would you rather wear the red t-shirt or would you rather wear the blue t-shirt? But always ensure that these choices are those which are acceptable to you as a parent. So if it doesn't make a difference whether he wears a red or a blue t-shirt, let him choose. It's the same with eating. So children are more likely to eat on their own when they are given a choice of what they want to. So say, would you rather have paratha or would you rather have rice? Both of these are acceptable options to you as a parent. But for the child, he feels, oh, this is something I have chosen, and this helps to build independence, and therefore he's more likely to eat the food on his own. So just in summary, so one, starting with the easiest part of the task and then gradually working backwards to until he learns the entire task. Two, praising the child at every step of the way, making a really big deal of something which is even really small, so that the child knows that his efforts are being appreciated. And three, providing the child choice in every step of the way, so that he knows that this is something that I have chosen to do, and therefore he's more likely to want to do it on his own. So I hope that in some amount answers the question.
Yes, Dr. Jessica, thank you so much. Is there anyone who wants to ask some more questions?
So I just want to take this opportunity to say a very big thank you to the GVM College of Education for putting us up with this session, and to each and every one of the participants here who have been active as well as silent participants. It's just it gives me great pleasure to have been able to share all this information with you all, and I really look forward to having more such sessions like this. So thank you so much, and thank you to Goretti and Dr. Matthew for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jessica. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jessica Pinto, for that very informative talk of how to develop interest in math, how to develop your language skills. I like the backward chaining, which you gave us the idea of backward chaining. Then modeling language, storytelling and retelling, and how to play different types of games, card games, board games, action games. I think I think that was simply wonderful, and thank you for the wonderful practical tips that you gave us. Um, the points that you covered will definitely go a long way and will be of great help to our parents through their journey of parenting their little ones. We now have with us Dr. Ananina George, Associate Professor from our college, Dr. Dada Vaidya College of Education, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening. A respected resource person, Dr. Jessica Pinto, SETU officials, Dr. Nandita, Mrs. Anjali, officiating principal, Dr. Jojan Matthew, extension department coordinator, Mrs. Corati Falcao, all the enthusiastic participants of the webinar. It is a privilege to propose vote of thanks for the first webinar on understanding developmental tasks of children of early childhood. Let me thank Dr. Jessica for such a lucid and enlightening session on the topic. You have given several points to ponder. Thank you, ma'am, for taking time and effort to share your ideas. Thanks to our officiating principal, Dr. Jojan Matthew, for supporting the activity. Thank you, sir. Special thanks to the coordinator, Mrs. Gorati Falcao, for all the planning and organizing for this session. Thanks also to the technical team for their relentless work. Special thanks to the Extension Department staff for continuously working on all the activities of Extension Service. Thanks to all the non-teaching staff for making this day possible and for their constant help. Thank you, one and all. Have a nice evening.
Thank you, Dr. Annalena George. Thank you very much. We have come to the end of today's program. I would like to thank in a very, very special way Ma'am Shanessa. Ma'am, I hope you are there. Thank you very much. She was coordinating with me for more than a month. We were planning how to go about. Thank you. If not for your support, this would not have been possible. I would like to remind the parents that tomorrow we will have the second day of the webinar, and the topic will be dealing with emotional problems in early childhood. So I would like to remind you to join on time. You can join 10 minutes early, and see you tomorrow at the same time at 3:30, same place, Google Meet. The link is the same, and have a nice evening to all of you. Hope you will join again tomorrow. You may now leave the meeting. Thank you.